There's certain genres that Citizen Brick has covered a pretty decent amount, whether it is some body horror style monsters or women that are supposed to be conventionally attractive. And the substance that we are going to be looking at today, their, copyright free name, the stuff is going to be a little bit of a crossover between all of that. I just watched this movie for the first time and was excited to get figures for it since, it is kind of a out of left field package for Citizen Brick, with it being a recent movie from the last year. Back of the card will be the pretty typical Citizen Brick write-up for their 2-packs. And honestly, the design of this card is a little less exciting than some of the other 2-packs that have come out in the last year, but, has the Hollywood star for Elizabeth. So it makes sense from the context of the movie. And of course, we'll have Sue as well as Monstro Elisasue. Excited to check out both of these minifigures. Let's crack it open. We'll start with Sue, since it's a little more straightforward on the minifigure front, where it really is just normal minifigure. This is actually an official hairpiece, which I don't think I've ever seen before, and works pretty well for that 80s sort of look here. Nice volume on the hair. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the substance and don't want to know about it, definitely don't watch this video until afterwards. It's on HBO Max right now. One continuity error on this minifigure is that she has a scar on the back of her body with the stitches, which would not be the case for Sue here, since she was the one birthed out of Elizabeth who would have had her back stitched up, and then she would have birthed out the Monstro version of both characters and would just be dead. Definitely the other version of her wouldn't have taken the time to sew her up or anything, so technically shouldn't have a stitched up back. I would have been okay with having like the ripped open back even, but honestly just having nothing there would have been fine too. But I guess it is kind of a nice feature to have that. It makes this torso a little bit more playable, I guess, since you could flip that to the front or something to have an alternative look for a fun character if you want a fig barf or something. Kind of cool too on the back of the legs. We got a little bit of printing there for the bodysuit continuing around, so that's kind of nice. This will have a similar setup to Roller Girl, which is why I pulled her out, since she would also have high socks. And in this case, roller skates and not shoes, but you can see here the sort of jogger socks, whatever those are called, I can't remember, have a little bit more detail with the extra little bit of stitching going throughout those for the added texture, which is nice to see. And the shoes even have some nice printing with the pink kind of accenting the white. So very cool to see a little bit of extra detail and effort put into these, but it will also still be just white legs with flesh printed on, which seems to be the go-to for them when it comes to printing legs like this, which would be the same case for Dirk Diggler, Roller Girl, like I already showed off, and also the Dallas Cowgirl, which, again, very similar concept here with the shorts and everything, but the weird shaping here for her dancing suit is a little bit interesting. And this is actually a very new technique for them, trying out this metallic pink ink, which they talked about in the Brick Chat podcast that they did recently. So it's interesting to see this, coming together and knowing what they were talking about. It does have a really cool color where it feels very sand purple, I would say, with the base color, obviously with it being metallic as well. We had a couple accessories here, just pulled one off before we showed it off, but we have the vial of the stuff, which obviously in the movie was labeled as the substance. So nice to get that, just the word printed on there, and you have the syringe, which would be for the stabilizer, I think it was called, or the food, one of the two, kind of uses for everything, or I guess it could be the syringe for the stuff, if you wanted to think about it like that. A couple different uses for everything here. I think the face print here looks very great with the little bit of eyeshadow pink going on there. You got star earrings on both sides of the head, which are also a nice little bit of surprise, being silver and shiny. And again, the highlight of this is going to be that pink suit with the metallic printing. Looks very nice. I'm noticing the arms are a little bit tight. I feel like the body shape here is pretty typical for a Citizen Brick female character. And you're actually able to bend the legs a pretty good amount, which will be nice for pictures since she is a character that's a little bit more mobile, where you'll want to get her into some different poses, like she is, doing her dance routine. So that's kind of fun and interesting. And also some side torso printing is also very appreciated, with a little bit of flesh at the top there to simulate, where your shoulders would be going through the suit. That's also very cool. They don't always do side torso printing, so it's a nice little treat when they do. And I would say overall this is executed very well. and it's a pretty nice piece of engineering where we're getting a new style of printing for them, as well as, some pretty extra bits of printing that they don't always do with the side torso printing. Same with the legs, with it being, flash wrapped all the way around. Everything's looking really good here. I feel like the likeness is pretty good. The smile works pretty well for this character, I would say, too. Maybe it would be kind of fun to have an alternative head or face with her teeth falling out. But, I feel like what we got here is a pretty good package, and this is just one of the two figures. So let's check out Monstro Elisasue, which might not be as exciting print-wise, but we have a very cool dress piece on the bottom there, which is a nice Lego-like fabric. Of course, a brand new molded head, which I know people have been saying should be used for clickers from The Last of Us, but the first thing I saw when I saw this head was Elephant Man, and I still think that could kind of work here, and probably something I'm going to fig barf for, a little mock for Instagram maybe at some point. Really nice texture on there where it really looks like it has like the cancerous sort of lumps, growths, and everything from the character from the movie. Got a couple teeth going on there, one eye showing on the front, obviously some nipples hanging out there from the dress. So this is a perfect character for Citizen Brick to want to make. Nice little detail and Easter egg on the back is an additional eye. It's unfortunate you don't have the full face going on there, since that was something that was in the movie where Demi Moore's head was on, I believe, the back of the head, kind of in that area, but I'm going to guess that that is what that is referencing. And, I feel like the little bits of dots on this, since I do believe this is like a shower curtain that she used to make the dress, something like that, since this was kind of thrown together by her after she did the substance the second time. Obviously, it would be kind of nice to have it on the fabric piece as well, since, it should all be the same fabric, but I'm sure that would be a little more complicated since this does have a lot of layering, it seems like. And it's probably a pretty big fabric piece, so I'm going to make a questionable choice here and remove it for the camera, and hopefully it'll come back together pretty easily, where it has 8 different connection points, so that it helps keeping the shape a lot, obviously, and makes a lot of sense why they would want so many connection points to keep the shape together. And the legs are just going to be basic swim trunk type legs. I wouldn't be surprised if these were reused from Ms. Neutral from, Brickworld 2 years ago, since it should pretty much be the same thing with just the black line and whatever color they would want to use to fill in that. So nothing weird or gross on the legs, unfortunately. I guess it would have been kind of nice to have like some fold lines or something like on their Toxic Avenger, but I guess, if you're going to cover with the dress, might as well skip it to save some costs. See how easy it is to get this back on after taking it off. Hopefully pretty easy. It feels like it is kind of holding its shape since it's probably been in that package for a couple weeks at least. And I'm going to do it off camera, but it takes a little bit of effort putting it back on if you take it off, but I think the look is great, so definitely beneficial to have all the extra connection points. All right, and I kind of got it together, so I'll throw the torso on quick. Hopefully I didn't mess up the pattern of this too much. Like I said, though, in the movie, it's pretty tossed together, so probably not the biggest deal if it doesn't look super perfect. I think, maybe I can try and get those extra flaps in the front a little more straight if I really wanted to, but I'm not super worried about that. I probably messed up the back though, so I'll have to review the footage and maybe try and get it back to the way it was when I originally got it. This is another fun character. I do really like the head mold here, which obviously adds a lot to the actual character to make it more accurate, and I'm always super excited to see the different molds that they make. There's even some extra little specs on the head in addition to the face, so a lot of little details that you might not notice right away. And it is kind of fun to see, the extra little eye on the back and everything. This is a very cool 2-pack, especially for very interesting movie. Glad to see them do this. Let's go to some comparisons and the final verdict. As a Citizen Brick pop culture collector, I feel like we've been eating pretty good this year and the last couple of years, honestly, with all these different minifigures you're seeing here. And as somebody that just enjoys like the history and process of making a figure by Citizen Brick, it's always very cool to see them innovating with different styles of printing, whether it is, metallic ink like for Sue there, or like always making a cool molded piece to further complement the design, like with the Monstro version of the characters. Always cool to see a very nice head And here's that direct comparison I mentioned earlier with the clicker from their Last of Us set. And I definitely agree this would definitely be useful for that if they made it in tan. And like I said, I do want to do some sort of mock-up for the Elephant Man with this part. I think that'll also work pretty well. All of these, are going to fit in perfectly with the rest of the Citizen Brick figures with their design language. We got another monster type character here with the Thing. And I feel like the Toxic Avenger here is the most direct comparison to Monstro, Elisasue. And it would have been nice, I also wouldn't have minded if they had just reused the pads for, the Toxic Avenger, using the wrinkles for the arms and the legs to make this one just a little bit more exciting. It was kind of cool of them to at least print the legs some way. They probably didn't even have to do that, but they still did and made it a little bit better. And I'm very happy with both these figures, whether it is the earrings or the little eye on the back of the torso of Elisasue. They're always putting in great details and just little things that you probably wouldn't miss if they weren't included, but it is still really nice to have them. And very excited to look at Gladys next. If you want to see more Citizen Brick reviews or custom LEGO videos overall, check out all the content on my channel. If you want to help out even further, feel free to join as a member for some extra perks. Like always, I have been Brick Radiop, and I will see you in the next video.